And a good morning, everybody. It is 6:25 in the morning, and I have way too much homework to catch up on, and that's why I'm here today. No, I'm here today because I've decided, in addition to the homework I have to catch up on, I want to start getting up earlier because I do better things before noon. And we're going to try and take as much advantage of that as possible. I think that's fair. I think that's appropriate. And I want to improve my life. And this is like the best way I feel I can right now. Because I am way more focused and way more ready to do things for the day in the morning than I am afternoon. By the time 12:30 hits, I just want to take a nap and go home. So we're going to try and get everything done before I feel like doing that. Now, there still will be... Now, that probably won't get achieved. But we're going to do our darndest. And then this is the beginning of something that I eventually want to follow up with and pursue further. I want to get up earlier, and I want to start my day at like 5, and even if we can get it even earlier, and I'm getting up at like 3 to train at 4, and then get my day started at 5, that would be so neat. But we're gonna start with 5. We're gonna, because I can do 6, but it's really hard for me to get up at 5. So we're gonna try and work my way back. I just think the more time that is available to me, the more time I will have. Well, the more structured time that's available to me, then the more will get done. And, maybe I'll have time to do, some of the things that I've always wanted to do, but, it requires actual effort. Anyway, we're going to do C-SPAN calls in the meantime. We're late enough that we still got some viewer calls. Early enough that what's up, Justin? Welcome to the morning stream. These are C-SPAN viewers. These are the people of America calling C-SPAN. Oh, whoops. I gotta change the sound.
The Washington Journal
Calling C-SPAN and letting them know their peace of mind. It's one of my favorite things to watch while I do homework.
National security, including over
This is what I'm gonna do.
$770 billion for the Defense Department. If approved, it would also.
If you got something to work on,
households worth more than $100 million.
A little bit of spare time this morning, go for it. If you're just relaxing before work, go for it. Listen to the fun callers.
Here's how you can reach out to us.
Farm your runes.
202-748-8000. Republicans 202-748-8001. Independents 202-748-8002. You can also post on our social media sites at facebook.com and cspan.wj.
I think one of my favorite calls was the other day where someone was like, he was like, just let Biden do his job. He's doing everything right. And then this guy, Pedro, is like, well, what do you think he's doing right? He's like, man, I don't got to tell you anything. Why are you asking all these stupid questions? It's like, bro, you called them.
It's still a request yet to be approved by Congress, but it was released yesterday. You can find it online. But here are the major breakdowns of some of those proposals, including what it does for national security. Overall, the budget request totals
We're talking budgets today.
$813 billion of that slated for national security. $773 billion would go to the Pentagon. Money also to Ukraine through the State Department and other means at $682 million. $7 billion to support European allies. On some other things, $82 billion for COVID funding over 5 years, $18 billion for climate resilience programs, and $17 billion for the Justice Department's law enforcement programs. That's some of the proposed spending. This new tax on certain households as well.
In budget news, more debt.
Minimum tax rate on households worth more than $100 million. It would apply to income and unrealized gains and the value of their liquid assets, such as stocks and the like. And then the White House estimating that would raise $360 billion in revenue over.
So a thing to realize is, unfortunately, the presidential budget is more of like a wish list, so it still has to get passed in Congress, but this shit's bussin'. 20% minimum tax rate on households worth more than $100 million.
Years. And that's according to a White House estimate. Again, those are just proposals, and particularly when it comes to that defense spending boost and then the new tax
damn it.
on certain households of wealth.
There we go.
You can call in and let us know what you think
Freaking
about
schoolwork.
that. Again, it's
Gotta find the right
202-748-8000
portals.
for Democrats, Republicans 202-748-8001, and Independents 202-748-8000.
One day, I'm gonna make a
You
call.
want to text us? That's 202.
But that's not today.
2003. And making
People-
the announcement about this proposal.
The people on this are just so goddamn raw that like anybody who's like coming in here to like troll, you just can't. You just don't have the energy for it. It's just so like everything is on this is so pure.
President Biden at the White House talked about his plans for defense spending on that side of the proposals. Here's some of that from yesterday.
This budget provides the resources we need to keep Americans safe, ensuring that our military remains the best prepared, best trained, best equipped military in the world. This budget also
America.
provides additional funding to forcefully respond
Don't forget your
to the aggression
breakfast.
against Ukraine and its economic, humanitarian,
Even if it's like a
and security
yogurt.
consequences.
Eat
The
that
world has
shit.
changed. In addition to dealing with terrorist organizations, for the second quarter of the 21st century, we're once again facing increased competition from other nation states, China and Russia, which are going to require investments to make things like space and cyber and other advanced capabilities, including hypersonics. And this will be among the largest investments in our national security in history. Some people don't like the increase, but we're in a different world today. America is more prosperous, more successful, and more just when it is more secure.
When it comes to some of those defense
We
spending
do it all
proposals,
day.
the New York Times highlights
That's what I'm talking about.
773 billion would do. Again, a 10% rise from 2022. 4 billion of that going to conduct research
Get
and
that
developing
protein.
defense
Get that protein in
capabilities. It
early.
also slates that 5 billion of that for go for a space-based missile warning system to detect global threats. $2 billion
See
of
that?
goes for a
You know
missile.
what that means? 5 billion's going to the Space Force, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Let's go, USA, USA.
Interceptor to protect the United States against ballistic missile threats from states like North Korea and Iran. Again, that's the New York Times. That was the proposal taking a look at defense. The president talked about saying that some people didn't like some of these proposals. That's highlighted in the Washington Post this morning. They write this: the release marked a sharp departure from Mr. Biden's budget plan a year ago as he sought to bulk up the country's social safety net during the height of the pandemic and showed much less regard for fiscal restraint. Last year's version would have raised the deficit over 10 years. This story adding that not all Democrats were satisfied in the hours after the budget went public. It was clear that some of the fissures in the Democratic Party that helped do Mr. Biden's agenda last year still existed.
Master Chief
Senator Bernie
intensifies.
Sanders of Vermont and Representative Pramila
I also like Master Chef
Washington said they worried that
intensifies.
the budget proposal would offer too much money for defense spending. at
Both
the
are
expense of other
acceptable.
programs. Quote, we do not need to raise the defense budget by another $31 billion, tweeted Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, adding that the United States instead needed to make investments in our communities. Under questioning by a reporter, she went on to say there are a lot of good things in the proposal, but unfortunately, presidents on both sides have continued to prioritize military spending. So that's on the defense side of spending. Again, Mr. Biden also spoke about a new tax that he would use and levy against households of wealth. Here's some of that proposal from yesterday from the president.
Households of wealth.
Americans, the last few years were very hard, stretching them to the breaking point. But billionaires and large corporations got richer than ever. Right now, billionaires pay an average rate of 8% on their total income. 8%
Damn, bro.
is the average they pay. Now, I'm a capitalist, but if you make $1
this is
billion
my
bucks, great.
I think this
Just
is.
pay your fair share. Pay a little bit. A firefighter and a teacher.
Yep. This is my
They
favorite
want to
part.
Double
Give it up.
the tax rate that a billionaire pays. That's not right.
Oh,
Fair.
oh, it's so weird. It's right in your ears. It's just, oh.
20% minimum tax that applies only to the top 100.
That whisper is just like it pierces your soul. It's like, man, leave the. He's got this whole like creepy Joe meme going for him, and then he just goes into the mic. That's not right.
The
Biden
1%,
ASMR.
1/100 of 1% of the Americans will pay this tax.
Oh
Believing
God.
minimum tax is fair,
It's just
and it raises 360
right into your heart, you know? If that don't wake you up, I don't know what will.
More of that available at our website at cspan.org. You can see
Dude, I could be dead asleep and somebody could like put that on their phone and like put it up to my ears and my eyes would just awake. Like, oh
it
God.
also on our app at C-SPAN Now. Some of you texting in their thoughts this morning. This is Russ from California saying Mr. Biden's defense budget or any other budget by government always way over the proof, 30 trillion in debt. Taxing the rich warranted, but it won't bail out Mr. Biden's spending problem. This is from Larry in West Caldwell, New Jersey, saying the billionaire's tax percentage-wise is about fair compared to what the general public needs to give the government in taxes. Again, texting us is always a way you can reach out to us too at 202-748-8003. Robert in California starts us off Democrats line. Robert, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Rain in the desert out here in the Mojave Desert.
Mojave.
I think it's a good plan to tax the billionaires. That makes sense compared to why tax the low middle class or the middle class, why not the billionaires? And we need a lot of money to replace all those Javelins and Stinger missiles that we're supplying.
Why, in Ukraine?
So that's the tax side. What do you think about the Defense Department request?
This dude just woke up.
Yeah, we're using a lot of our supply of Stinger and Javelins. So
Well, that's what he cares about
Let's
today.
hear from
The
James.
stingers and the javelins.
Independent line. James, good morning. You're next.
Oh, good morning, Pedro. How are you? And good morning, America. My
Morning, America.
Tobacco. It's a plant. Where's all that money going?
And how does that relate to either the Defense
Bro,
Department spending or the
It goes to
tax
the
on
tobacco
billionaires?
companies. What do you think happens? We sell it. Like, it gets sold. And the government doesn't own Marlboro. The government doesn't own Camel. Like, they get the money.
Well,
Also, we lobby the shit out of that. So, like, you know, it's like, unless there's like a local tax in your area, federally, we don't really do anything about that. I love that shit, though. What about
you got me on there,
cigarettes?
Pedro. God bless you.
Well,
You got me on that, Pedro. God bless you.
because it's a plant. It's free. Where's all the money going? Where's all the money going? It's a plant. Basically, where's it going?
Okay, we'll go hear from Edward.
That's
Edward
such a
in
dumb question.
Station, Ohio, Republican line. Hi.
Good morning. You know, I don't want to beat up on this president. He does enough on his own, putting his foot in his mouth every day. Even going over to Europe was a waste. But you want to talk about a hypocrite. He sits there talking about the budget we're talking about today. Tax to rich. He whispers his creepy crap. Dude, you know, the media in the tank that's mum for years. His son's indicted. Grand jury's now paying him, the big guy, millions and millions from Ukraine that Trump said 3 years ago they impeached him for.
Okay.
Oh my
we'll
God.
Stick to the budget side since you called in on that. So what do you think?
Oh my God.
But what? Oh, you're going to cut me off?
No.
Oh,
I'm
you're
not-
gonna cut me
I'm
off?
Still talking.
Paying a fair share, but yet this family's milked the system for years. Ridiculous.
Okay, that's Edward.
These people cannot stand like a lick of pushback. Like, I'm pretty sure like when these people yell about shit, they're yelling at like their wife who's just like, that's I don't know, that's not right. I just know that's not right. And it's just like, yep. And then they're doing this, and then I don't know, but I just know that's not right. It's like, man, the second they run into someone that's like, well, what do you think about this? They're like, fuck you, man, telling me how to think. God damn it, don't cut me off. It's like, bro, he just asked a question.
Edward in Ohio.
He gets so defensive. I love it so much. It's my favorite.
8,000 for Democrats, 202-748-8001 for Republicans. Independents, 202-748-8002 is how you can reach out to us that way. Defense One, the website there, takes a little more of a deep dive, taking a look at issues when it comes to Defense Department spending. They write this morning on their website that Mr. Biden's budget requests 8% more than the administration requested last year. Congress added tens of billions of dollars, finally approved the 2022 defense appropriations at $700
In other news, my wife is a tramp.
2023 request is
God.
$30 billion more than that. The real growth is 1.5% after.
Luckily, that's
inflation.
not this news
Went
channel.
on to say this $20 billion to $30 billion is not about making the force bigger, saying a senior defense official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. It's about modernizing the force, making it more capable to compete with our near-peer adversaries, saying that the entire national security budget request of $813 billion and $40 billion of that largely going to maintain nuclear weapons under the Energy Department's budget. Joe is next, Washington, D.C. Hello, Democrats line.
Good morning, Pedro. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Major's a
Great.
badass.
So I'm not against military spending at all. I do think given the current situation, we should be focusing on modernizing our defense systems and, our technology and things like that. I will say that the more you listen to experts who analyze how that budget is spent in the Pentagon and elsewhere in the Defense Department, I think that is something that we should be focusing on more. We should be focusing on how those funds are allocated and whether or not that money is being spent in the most efficient way. Now, the other point I wanted to make is that in this proposal, President Biden has once again asked to increase funding for Title I. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe you guys are able to pull that up to show everybody. But the budget last year asked for an increase in funding, and he only got, a fraction of what he asked for. And this time around, he's asking to double the Title I budget, which for those of you who don't know is used to fund low-income schools. And I really can't stress enough how important it is to be investing in education and investing in our communities, as Senator Jayapal said the other day, or Representative Jayapal, I should say.
Okay.
So, I really hope that moving forward,
This looks like me studying Elden Ring.
recognize the importance of investing in education, because that's kind of the root of everything, right? If we have an educated population, it's
Yeah, dude, you just got all your shit out. You got your little scratch paper. It's like
accordingly.
you got your little scratch paper that's like you trying to take notes. It's like Elden Ring builds, sword build, magic build. There's just like dumb little like fucking scratches on a scratch paper. You got your laptop over here. You got your Xbox all up.
Joe there in Washington, D.C. A graph from the Wall Street Journal this morning highlights spending by department. That Defense Department spending, the largest allocation from the request, $773 billion. Also following that, $138 billion for Health and Human Services, $135 billion to the Department of Veterans Affairs, to the previous caller's topic, the Education Department, $88 billion for that spending. There's more there at the Wall Street Journal site if you want to take a look at and comment on either the defense spending or the tax that the president's proposing as well. Mark in Maryland, Republican line. Hi.
Hey, good morning. Hey, the thing is, this tax on millionaires, I guess it's people who make more than 400 million was the number.
I believe it was less than that, but worth over 100 million
Chegg.
households anyway. So
I don't want Chegg.
in a general sense.
I want Stack Overflow.
The problems we have in this country is that we tend to other millionaires, and I know that sounds like a funny thing to say, but we tend to forget when you have somebody like a Bernie Sanders who proposes this kind of stuff. It's basically othering people. People in that tax bracket. Most Americans don't realize they pay about 40% of the taxes. That includes what we all pay. And it's like, what do you think people do who make money like that? They don't just hide it under their mattress. They invest it. They create jobs for Americans. The Democrats have taken this narrative of government needs to create jobs for people, and government has never created jobs for people other than federal wasteful little projects that they have no business being involved in the first place. millionaires and billionaires actually put money into people. But politicians wouldn't have us believe that because Americans are not educated.
Watch Pedro ask this dude for an example, and he just shit his pants.
The education system, they've basically thrust this narrative on kids in school and in college.
Okay.
Capitalism is bad.
Pedro's just gonna let it by. He's just let it go by.
Calling into his point, CBS, they're reporting on saying that Mr. Biden's budget would pledge to do that kind of wealth tax.
I just want him to be like, and what billionaire is the biggest job creator that you're aware of? Like, I just wanted one of those, just and then have him be like, you know what, fuck off, fuck you, Pedro. Like,
Republicans say would hurt the economy by diminishing private investment in companies that create jobs and cause the wealthy to put their fortunes to work abroad. Republican lawmakers have said that the Biden administration's spending over the past year has led to greater economic pain in form of those higher prices. The inflation that came with reopening of the U.S. economy as closures from the pandemic begin to end, and amplified by supply chain issues, low interest rates, and now disruptions in oil and natural gas markets because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You've heard people talk about the billionaire tax side of this, some people talking about the defense spending side of this. You can comment on one of those things and other aspects of this budget request. Again, the number is 202-748-8000. For Democrats, Republicans, 202-748-8001. Independents, 202-748-8002. And text us at 202-748-8003.
8003.
Part St. Lucie,
They
Florida.
got all the 8,000s.
Hey, good morning. Thank you.
You're on, sir. Go ahead.
You're on, sir.
I say that taxing the millionaires and billionaires it's not going to work. It's not going to work. These people have generational wealth. Taxing them 2 extra more percent is not going to fix the problems that we have. These people are rich because they're smart. They're rich because they know business. These people will find out any way to keep their wealth inherited. And as far as the defense spending, it should be cut. How much more do we need? How much more military do we need? We have hundreds of bases scattered all around the world, while the people here in our own country suffer. It's ridiculous.
Do you think that the events do you think that the events in Ukraine and Russia have changed a philosophy towards spending on the Defense Department?
I think it's irrelevant. I mean, the war there's been going on since 2014. It's only relevant now because it's on news.
Okay, Kevin, and they're in Florida. This is from William in Connecticut saying when it comes to the budget that the tax on unrealized income seems too extreme, quelling traditional investing strategies for lower income investors. Other items seem more traditional in nature. From a viewer, this is off of Twitter saying, I say, let's see Congress pass a bill to raise the taxes on the top 1% of our super wealthy, and then we could talk about more money for defense. And then American Joseph said,
I did the code right.
That if it's not fair that billionaires pay X in tax, so
I thought homework in the morning's hard.
Middle workers, so they can pay as little as the billionaires. So some of you commenting on Twitter this morning, as you can, at C-SPAN WJ. Some of you posting on Facebook at facebook.com/C-SPAN. And texting us, if you want, 202-748-8003. This is Jeffy in Michigan, Democrats line. Hi.
Jeffy.
Yeah, can you hear me, Pedro?
You're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm trying to get on C-SPAN for the free month. But anyway, you talking to somebody with got common sense. You hear all these Republicans calling like they just got a kindergarten somewhere. I mean, they don't stand for nothing.
Wait, this guy called on the Republican line.
All they do is whine about, Biden doing the right thing.
So these proposals from the president, what do you think?
I think he should do more. I'm satisfied what he's doing because so many people out here that need help. Billionaires going to jump into space and all that nonsense. And these Republican folk, they don't stand for anything, but don't cut me off.
Don't cut me off. They're always so worried.
Yeah, the millionaires should pay more. They should pay more. They've been getting away all the time.
So would you also advocate for a higher defense budget too?
No.
Why is that?
Because it's just what did Scrummy, excuse me, I'm trying to think. The one guy said, you're aware of the industrial military people who would waste all this money, but I'm glad you let me hear on, but the Republicans don't believe in nothing. They claim they don't believe in abortion.
Okay,
But,
okay. We'll leave it there. Let's go to Brad in California, Republican line. Hi.
Hi, how you doing? Good morning. I think this illuminates the difference in the parties in a lot of ways because the Democrats believe that the government should be in charge of all aspects of your lives. That's why on every issue, pretty much government's the answer. But they believe in more bureaucrats, higher taxes, more regulations, and I think that's a central difference between the two parties. But a side note too is
that guy's not incredibly wrong about how he answered that. A lot of what you can determine between a Republican and a Democrat all comes around to a lot of Democrats and Republicans have the same problems. It's just the difference comes from how you solve it.
I've watched C-SPAN for years, and I'm a retired teacher, and you don't have there's not one guest host that you have that's a conservative, not one. They're all left of center.
No,
so
nobody puts out their positions on this network as far as our host and guest hosts are concerned. So
yeah, they're not allowed to
have that perception, but so
there's not one.
Let's go to Steve.
I love that shit, dude. Ever since I don't know, there was some sort of turning point, and everyone just started thinking C-SPAN was leftist Democrat news and shit, and they've literally just been well, this is happening in Congress today. Oh, we're gonna pass a bill that allows traffic budgets in certain states.
Steve,
they've been here covering the most boring shit, and then every so often something exciting happens, and they're well, you guys are so biased, you don't even have a single Republican commentator on your thing.
Democrats line, hi.
Hello there.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, yeah. So I just wanted to say that, personally, I have some rather extreme beliefs when it comes to the taxation of billionaires. Personally, I believe that, there should be, some way to work around this. Because personally, the way that I think it works out is when we have the 1% of the 1% kind of thing, you know what I'm talking about, the extreme wealthy. It just becomes that capitalism kind of just breaks because they just have so much assets that they just accrue on top of themselves. And it just, I feel breaks how capitalism works at a certain level. And I don't know what the solution is for that. But I think that it necessarily needs a solution. And
sir, that is capitalism working absolutely perfectly. That's the problem that we have is that we've sort of learned we have to moderate our capitalist inclinations.
Obviously, it would have to be a rather extreme one because, people would have to either lose money or the value of money would have to change in some way. And it's just not something that's, easily done.
That's Steve in New York. Again, for these proposals by the White House, an opening proposal when it comes to the 2023 budget, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, Republicans, 202-748-8001, and Independents, 202-748-8002. One of the people responding yesterday to the president's budget proposal was the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, on the floor of the Senate yesterday with thoughts on that proposal. Here he is.
Our armed forces may get the short end of the stick from this White House, but plenty of far-left domestic priorities will be literally swimming in cash. While they limit defense to 4% growth before inflation, non-defense spending would get a significantly larger increase. Not all domestic spending, however. Border security and the Department of Homeland Security barely tread water, just like our troops. But other agencies and departments that are more useful for the far left's agenda, like the IRS, the EPA, Commerce, HUD, and Labor, make out like bandits with gigantic increases of 20 and 30% since 2021. They want to pour money into absurdities like the UN Green Climate Fund, borrow from China to fund a global...
surprisingly enough, this administration actually kind of wants to tax billionaires. Doing that is really hard, though. The IRS has admitted it's a lot easier to tax dumb fuck people like me or regular people. Dude, McConnell is ancient, but amazingly, he is looking better. Like, I don't know how, but like, during Trump's presidency, he looked like a fucking decrepit, like, he looked like the thing from Pan's Labyrinth, with the eyeballs and shit. Like, his hands were all, like, bloated and clammy and purple and shit, and like, man. He looks a lot better now. Blood of the Father! Fuck. But, yeah, so the IRS has admitted that it's, like, way easier to tax normal people and to audit normal people, because whenever they try to do that to rich people come out with them with lawyers. So, like, raising the budget for the IRS kind of makes sense if you're trying to fund them to actually, like, take on the battles that are the billionaire, like, taxing billionaires, because that's a fucking war, all right? Anybody who, like, decides to do that is going into, like, a huge legal battle.
Global bureaucracy that will hand free money back to China. There's plenty of money for things like anti-gun regulations, free lawyers for illegal immigrants, and something called environmental justice.
Environmental justice?
This whole far-left feast leaves out the reckless taxing and spending spree that Democrats
I think that's
failed to pass
funny
last year.
that literally in like 2019, 2020, like, this man admitted that humans are affecting climate change. He admitted it. Because, I don't know, I think there's like a bill that passed that he was like, I admit that this is like a thing that we have to think about, but also we shouldn't think about it like this, is like his way of basically doing it. It's like, he didn't approve of the method.
And are now trying to revive.
And now he's back to the old narrative.
Still wants all that spending.
Environmental justice.
Budget for it, honestly.
If you go to the Hill website this morning, there's a piece following up on the proposal on that tax on certain households. This you can find online at thehill.com. As the Biden administration touted its proposal of minimum income tax for households worth more than $100 million, estate lawyers Monday were paying attention to a more technical but also more powerful set of proposed revisions to estate and gift taxes that would go after inherited caches of wealth that have long stood beyond the reach of tax collectors. The changes seek to downgrade sophisticated types of shelters available to the ultra-rich and their financial engineers that allow piles of money worth billions of dollars to go untaxed as they accrue over centuries. While the fiscal 2023 revision provisions in the Treasury's so-called Green Book will be debated by lawmakers over the next several months, it may not make it into law. Tax attorneys are describing the proposals as much more expressly targeted than in similar measures put forward last year. If you want to read more about that, that's the website, thehill.com. That's the story. You can find that in. Let's hear from Thomas in Honolulu.
So
Good
cool.
morning. I was prompted to call by the comments of a couple folks just before me in the last few minutes. I used to work in economic development, so I want to address what I think is one of the biggest myths from Econ 101, that rich people need to stay rich so they can create jobs for the rest of us. It's a convenient fiction for them, but as we used to tell new entrepreneurs, the very last thing you do in business is hire people. You avoid that expense as long as you can and only hire when it's unavoidable. So the idea that they go into business to create jobs is not lunacy, but fantasy, I would say. If we want to balance the budget, instead of a token tax on billionaires, I would suggest we look at all the corporate welfare that's stuck throughout the tax code. Our federal tax code is, 6,000 pages long, plus rules and regulations. It doesn't need to be that long if there wasn't all these special tax breaks crammed into small print. And finally, I think instead of just arguing over how many crumbs we should hand out to the have-nots, we need to focus on ways to democratize the ownership of income-producing wealth, beginning with things like employee stock ownership plans and profit sharing, just for starters. Thank you.
Thomas in Honolulu. The Journal of Accountancy adds not only talks about the minimum income tax of that 20%, it adds also that the budget would increase the corporate tax rate from the current 21% to 28%, and also institute
budgets are so boring.
Participation in a global minimum
But
tax.
it is what it is.
This is Jim in Florida, Republican line.
Good morning.
Honestly, I'd rather talk about budgets than Ukraine right now anyway. Nothing against them.
People need to realize that
It's
when
just
you talk about
the
the
little
United States
asshole entertainment part of my brain wants different
we have
crumbs of
100
content.
destroyers and they have 150 destroyers. We have 50 tanks and they've got 70 tanks. What it's become is a technological race. And we have been caught with our pants down on hypersonic. And we may be in the process of getting caught with our pants down on other defense systems also. In other words, underwater propulsion. So think technology. Don't think of the number of tanks and how big the Army is. And that takes a lot of money, And we obviously haven't been spending enough on it because we just got our pants caught with our pants down on hypersonic. Now, number 2 on billionaires.
That doesn't mean jack shit, though. Like, where no one's, like, the only people getting hypersonic missiles used against them right now are Ukrainians. Like, we're not in a war with Russia, so we don't have to worry about that necessarily. We're still working on it. Also, another big problem, a bigger issue than apparently having the military equipment is getting the military equipment to the right spot, and Russia seems to be god-awful at that. Their logistics are a fucking nightmare. Like, we overestimated the shit out of them at the beginning of the Ukrainian war. Like, the reason this has gone on for a month now is because, like, they can't, like, they just don't know how to get things places. I don't know what else to say.
I'm of two minds about billionaires. My first thought is the billionaires made all these pronouncements about how they need to be taxed more during the last election year. And I'm thinking, you know what? Let those Democrats go. You wanted more taxes? You've got them. Sit it in your lap and live with it. But my other mind is that with Democrats and taxes, the beginning is never the end. The beginning is never the end. And they're looking at billionaires today, but pretty soon they're going to be saying, you know what, that worked pretty good. We don't have to just do it with billionaires. We'll do it with everybody.
We're already doing it with everybody.
This is a pretty disastrous thing. Billionaires are a very, very small fraction of anything happening in our country, but they focus on it for political reasons.
Everyone pays taxes.
This isn't going to pass.
Okay.
It's not going to pass.
People who pay the least are the richest people on the planet.
Excuse me, in Maryland, Democrats line. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you today, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
And real quick, the gentleman that called prior to talk about it, you don't really have conservative views on that side. It's true. Washington Journal has been noted to be far to the left. And now I'm a Democrat, mind you. And
Okay.
don't question on the
Made that point to the budget request. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, the budget request is garbage. And the thing where it comes down to is why don't we talk more about Klaus Schwab? Why don't we talk about him in the Great Reset? I mean, these are facts.
The Great Reset! This guy's saying he's a Democrat, and he's like, why don't we talk about the Great Reset? Holy shit, dude. Like, you're not fooling anyone.
Well, stick to the
my
budget.
God.
You call it large. What do you mean by that?
To do with the budget. This does have to do with the budget. See, this is the problem with networks
Excuse
like
me,
this.
sir. We're talking
See,
about
we're
the
not
budget today. You called in and said it was large. Explain why. Tom, are you there?
He left.
Yeah, I'm here. I thought you guys cut me up. I'm saying.
No, I said it. You said the budget was large. Explain.
They do this all the time. He's like, hey, I'm just talking about this today. What about this do you feel? Hey, why the fuck did you cut me off? Don't fucking cut me off like that. Like, I didn't cut you off. I just asked you a question. You can keep talking. I just want you to talk about this.
Corruption. Why are we
That's
talking
too
more
good,
about
dude.
transpiring and as opposed to these
People are so mad.
Which they know all they're going to do. Half of them are going to line their pockets anyways with it.
Okay, we'll go to Larry. Silver Spring, Maryland, independent line. Hi.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I guess what I want to say.
You know what also bothers me about the Great Reset is it's literally just like exponential technological growth, but being framed through a different, like being told through a different narrative lens. Like, it's like basically people talking about how technology is going to digitize more things and get less people out of the workplace and, you know, expand on robotics and cyber tech and all these other things. But like, and that's, you know, I think that's cool. But then, you know, you say things like, oh, they're going to change the way that you work, and they're going to change the way that you see the world, and they're going to change the way that you have to spend your day to day, and it's all going to be about this, and it's all going to be about this. And it's like, well, you're not wrong, but like, you guys, like, that's literally, like, it's all a matter of perspective on whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Like, this is like what we want. We want things to be faster. We want things to be more intuitive. We want things to be more integrated in our lives and efficient. And like, you know, like, that's going to be another thing we have to worry about down the road. It's like, you're not stopping, and it's not being pushed by the government. It's being pushed by corporations. You're not stopping corporations. You're not stopping Walmart from putting in more self-checkout lines. Like, it just, the price just like does not compare. They're doing it to save a buck. It's way cheaper to have those self-checkout lines and one employee supervising 9 different checkouts than it is to have one employee or 2 employees in some places at one checkout. Like, you know, if that becomes the reality, if it's like, oh, this piece of technology will just eclipse the way that we work on things now, there's no way we're not taking that.
That you know, we should, as the United States should unite in everything that we're going right now. And then
I need a tea warmer.
President Biden did yesterday, I think is correct. I think we have to you know, rebuild our military infrastructure. You know, look China, look, you know, Russia. You know, they alignment, they get in. What is it? They sign things between them, and they try to bring India. They try to do all those things. But then looking back right now, what's happening in Ukraine, you know, we should, you know, militarize our update our military, and yeah, it has to be spent wisely. It has to be, you know, monitorized better, I guess. That's my thought. That's my opinion.
When it comes to China, the website Defense One takes a look at some of the programs under
China.
You can find it on its website, saying under pressure from Congress, Mr. Biden requested $400 million for the Countering the People's Republic of China Malign Influence Fund, which is $100 million more than the yearly allocation in the Senate passed version. It's still waiting reconciliation with the House. The $130 billion research and development request is the largest ever, according to defense officials. It seeks to boost research into hypersonic weapons at $4.7 billion, microelectronics and 5G wireless at $3.3 billion, and biotechnology at $1.3 billion. And the budget also calls for retiring 150 Air Force planes and more than 12 Navy ships to free up money to buy new weapons. And in a sign of the Pentagon shift away from ground wars, the Air Force wants to cut its planned buy of HH-60W Jolly Green IIs, search and rescue helicopters. That's a variant of the Black Hawk meant to replace older Pave Hawk rescue helicopters. That from 113 to 75 aircraft. More there in that Defense One story if you want to see breakdowns of some of these weapon systems that are being proposed. In our next segment, by the way, if you're interested in learning more about specifically the defense side, we're going to be joined by Todd Harrison of the Center for Strategic International Studies, specifically studies defense budgets. And we'll ask him about more details as far as the defense side of the budget request. You can comment on that, as some of you have. Some comment on the tax on millionaires, as some of you have. 202-748-8000 for Democrats, 202-748-8001 for Republicans and Independents, 202-748-8002. A couple of things to keep in mind today when it comes to the budget. The House Budget Committee will have a hearing today with the OMB Director, the Office of Management and Budget, Shalanda Young, talking about the request. You can see that 10 o'clock this morning, C-SPAN 3, cspan.org, also at our C-SPAN Now app. When it comes to matters of security, a hearing with the commander of the U.S. European Command and NATO's Supreme Allied Commander. Now, you can see that if you want on our website and our C-SPAN Now app. That will be at 9:30 this morning, but we're going to rebroadcast it for you at 8 o'clock tonight. You can see that on C-SPAN 2, cspan.org. Also at C-SPAN Now, if you want to see that. And then later on, and we'll show you this as well during the day, Representative Don Young, Alaska Republican, lying in state in Statuary Hall at the U.S. Capitol. Ceremony at 11 o'clock today. That on C-SPAN, cspan.org, and C-SPAN Now. Stephen in Kentucky, Democrats line.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Pedro. I'm a huge fan of you. You do a great job. I just wanted to say that the budget is too high. We spend way too much on military, unnecessary things. We balloon these numbers. It's too high. And on the billionaire tax, man, what is up with Americans not liking to tax billionaires? Why should there be billionaires in this world? They could pay a little more for all of us to benefit. It's like trickle-down economics. It doesn't work, guys.
You don't become a billionaire without like severely fucking someone over in the process.
It does not work.
So back to the Defense Department. Why do you think it's too high specifically?
You know, every year it gets higher and higher, it seems like. If we can just have 1 year that we don't exceed or just spend less, I think we could actually make a difference. You know, we don't need to update every single thing that is, a year old. You know, wait a year, wait 2 years. Some of this technology is pretty advanced. It's way more advanced than some other countries. I think we're just spending way too much money way too fast.
We'll go to Dave. Dave is in Minnesota Republican line. Good morning.
Good morning. I was just wondering, how are they going to tax assets and unrealized income? Is that every year tax?
I'll find a story to kind of elaborate that, but since you asked the question, what leads you to ask it? Why are you curious about it?
Well, how would that work on farmland? Are they going to tax it every year? Assets?
If I may ask, do you fall into that category, or are you just curious by nature on it?
Oh, I'm just asking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's Dave there.
That's I mean, like, he didn't really like push it a little, but that's actually a really interesting question because like people like farmers might have all of their value put into their capital. Like they might actually have a home that's over $100 million in value because of the property and because of the like projects that they're working on the land, but because of because of the fact that he's like a farmer, you don't necessarily like just because you have $100 million of value in land doesn't necessarily mean that you're making that much. You might be just making ends meet, despite the fact that this is all the land you have and you have like really valuable property. That's really interesting to think about because like a lot of because also like, generational wealth has benefited the ultra wealthy the most, but it also benefits people like farmers, like people who like have these like generational trades. Because like you don't like a lot of these kids, they grow up knowing like they're going to inherit the farm. So they might as well get good at this shit.
In New Hampshire, the CNBC follows up with a story. It may answer the questions that you pose, but as far as it's called the Billionaire Minimum Income Tax. Assess that 20% minimum tax rate on those worth more than $100 million. Half of that revenue could come from worth more than $1 billion. The proposed levy is expected to reduce the deficit by $360 billion in the next decade, according to the document. If a wealthy household is already paying 20% on their full income, they won't pay an additional tax on the proposal. If they pay less than 20%, they'll owe a top-up payment to meet the new minimum. As a result, the new minimum tax will eliminate the ability for unrealized income of ultra-high net worth households to go untaxed for decades or generations. That's according to the document, assuming that's provided by the White House. But CNBC is where you can read that story for yourself, find out more about that. In Alabama, Independent Line, this is JD. Hello.
Good morning, Pedro. Yes, I believe that this Biden proposed budget is an absolute disaster. Coming at it here from a slightly different point, I don't know if many people are aware of this, but I was reading yesterday. I read so much. Axios, Hill, one of them, LifeSite News, lifenews.com. Biden is proposing for the second year in a row, failed last year. He is attempting to extraordinarily scrap the famous Hyde Amendment that's been in place since the 1970s. For your listeners, that is the amendment that since the 1970s has disallowed American taxpayers from paying for prenatal murdering, a.k.a. abortions. That's since the 1970s, Americans have consistently, Marist polls over the years have shown, including this year, that 70% of Americans oppose spending a dime of our taxpayer money for an elective prenatal murder. We don't pay for liposuction. We don't pay for cosmetic surgery, elective. We don't pay for euthanasia. And we darn sure shouldn't be paying for prenatal murdering of human beings. Now, Biden.
Okay, that's JD. Let's go to Andrew in Alexandria, Virginia, independent line.
Yes, good morning.
Pedro's such a badass.
Thank God for C-SPAN. I'm so glad that we get
Thank God for C-SPAN.
Unfiltered news and a difference of opinions. And I just wanted to say I think there should be a fair tax. I'd like to see everyone taxed at a similar rate, capital gains and ordinary income. I believe Steve Forbes promoted something similar to what I'd like to see. And maybe that could lower the tax on everybody.
Would that be disproportionate to lower income people?
Excuse me?
Would that be disproportionate to lower income people?
No, I think that if they tax ordinary income, and that's all working people, which is like 99%, and then they tax the very rich, I think that would lower, and that's ordinary income and capital gains at the same rate. I think that could lower the tax rate on everyone. Maybe it would. I think they say average. Working people pay about 35% of their income in taxes, and the rich pay maybe half of that or less, a third, a quarter, or half of that. So maybe they could lower the rate for everyone to, 15 to 20%. And I think that would lower that would be fair. I think it would be fair, and it could lower the rate for everyone.
That's caller talking about the flat rate as it's been described. You can roll that into the mix as well. The Washington Post, in their analysis of this, takes a look at deficits and things like that, saying it's the White House budget, including that $2.5 trillion in new tax revenue. Of that $2.5 trillion, roughly $1.5 trillion will go to new spending programs. The remainder going to reducing the deficit, said Mark Goldwyn. He's the senior vice president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. That's a group that advocates for lower deficits. It says that's like a $2.5 trillion swing. Last year, the White House was increasing the deficit by $1.4 trillion, and now they're decreasing it by offering $1 trillion by lower, other than a trillion. That's according to him. That's in the Washington Post. Let's go to Hal, Republican line in Florida. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to respond about the defense budget and about the taxes. Look, we need more military, not less. When you look at what Russia's doing and what China is threatening to do, there's no way we can't spend money to defend ourselves. China has designs on Taiwan. It has designs on the world. This is just crazy that, someone says, oh, we've got to lower the defense budget. Well, honestly, someone's got to stop China. Someone's got to stop Russia. And this is just the way it is.
And how do you think more spending would achieve that?
More spending will give more money for research and development to finally get what they've already got, which are very, very high-speed rockets. They've got rockets that go literally 10 times the speed of ours. This is insane. We've got to have a way to counter what they're doing. Look, and when you compare our budgets with their budgets and we say, oh, we're spending more than the top 5 people against us combined, that's all crazy. Their money has nothing to do with our money, and a lot of what they're doing, you can't even say it's money. they're spending like you wouldn't
Can't
believe
even
on their
say
artwork.
it's money.
They just don't call it money. Well, they're a communist country. They can call it anything they want, and they can just shovel money in. You know,
It's not how it works at all.
that we'd let Taiwan fall, or we'd let the Ukraine fall. And as far as the billionaires tax, that's like when we finally got an income tax. And
It's like, okay, so Russia has not been communist for a while. It's an oligarchy, and what that basically means is that all the big companies, all the big, like, I mean, basically what it means is that enough people propped enough people up that they all founded the companies that basically make the economy of Russia. So a handful of people own all the big companies and have a say in all of the government and are like the cultural pariahs of, you know, of Russia. So it's like if Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk all of a sudden became like, they all of a sudden created like a parliament and became part of government, that would be what their government would look like. You know, it's like they have like, and like that would be a little more corporatized even. Theirs is a little more personal.
And we swore up and down, everybody swore, oh, it would only be for the richest of the rich. Well, by the end of the 1930s, it was literally a tax off every dollar you made over a certain amount, if you made over a certain amount. And we're talking over 80%. This is insane. You know, I had to have this explained by a relative when I was young about he couldn't make money after a certain point because it didn't matter what he made. It all went to one form of the government or another.
Okay, that's how they're in Florida. When it comes to the politics behind the release of the budget, Politico picks up that with a story by Laura Barron Lopez this morning saying it's Joe Biden's budget delivered with a Joe Manchin-style flourish. The White House is boasting that the president's budget contains major deficit reduction, a move that Democrats see as a calculated appeal to a handful of centrist lawmakers who hold the pre-midterms fate of the president's economic agenda in their hands. Introduced on Monday, the proposal comes as Mr. Biden seeks to revive talks with Senate Democratic moderates, such as West Virginia's Joe Manchin, on central elements of his now-defunct social spending bill. That includes universal pre-K, lowering prescription drug prices, and combating climate change. The White House's efforts to woo over those lawmakers with a deficit reduction-focused message, not to mention more money for policing in the Pentagon, could also risk alienating progressives in Mr. Biden's party. But at first blush, the left appeared fine with the overture. More of that in Politico if you want to read it there. In Massachusetts, this is Eddie, Republican line.
Hi. According to what I understand, the middle billionaires, take for instance Bezos' Amazon, to pay that tax, he's going to have to sell something, whether it's stocks or whether it's property that he bought to reestablish it. Now it's a double hit because once he sells something, it's capital gains. So he's lose situation. Why would you want to stimulate? Why would you want to hurt somebody like that who's making jobs? And as far as spending money for abortions, things like that nature, it's ridiculous. Thank you.
That's Eddie in Massachusetts. Washington Times takes a look at immigration-related spending in the budget, saying that the president's budget request would take $2 billion in unspent border wall money and allow it to be spent instead on building roads and cutting down brush along the U.S.-Mexico boundary. In the 2023 proposal, Mr. Biden takes a different tack, seeking to expand the types of things money can be spent on. Mr. Biden said the money should be allowed to go to technology, roads, eradication of vegetation, environmental repairs, and scientific studies of past border wall construction. He also called for the Homeland Security Department to send $225 million from the wall account to land management agencies in the Interior and Agricultural departments, saying the president wants that money to use to repair damage he said occurred from wall building in the Trump years. Again, that's the Washington
Look at that
Times.
shitty wall.
Just about 15 minutes left. If you want to comment,
I want to find a picture of that wall again. Yeah, look at that shit. You know what we need? We need a big stamp every fucking, I don't know, every like quarter mile we need a big stamp that says Made in USA. God, what a pooey little wall. Who's getting over, like, that's so dumb.
president wants that money to use to repair damage he said occurred from wall building in the Trump years. Again, that's the Washington Times. Just about 15 minutes left. If you want to comment on the budget, most of you commenting on the tax portion or the Defense Department portion, some of you commenting on others. 202-748-8000 for Democrats, 202-748-8001 for Republicans and Independents, 202-748-8002. We'll go to Tom in Pennsylvania, Independent line.
Yeah, hi, good morning. There's one thing I don't hear anybody talking about that I think, I've seen going on in my city as well as I'm sure.
Should ask China to help on the wall. They did a great job.
All this talk about. Let's
Damn right, bro.
From the people that are working hard and paying taxes already. How about the people that aren't paying taxes? Okay, and I'm not talking about poor people.
Let's just admit that we took their idea. Let's just do it. Let's just admit it. We took their idea. We were going to do the Great Wall thing. It didn't work. It was not so great.
Legal businesses throughout this country that aren't registered properly. In our city alone, they could raise millions, if not $1 billion, if they just enforce and get these people on the books and collect the tax revenue
on the books
that they should be paying. The other point I want to make is I think a good way to generate a lot of money immediately, and I think is very fair, would be to impose a transaction tax for every stock, bond, any type of trade in the stock market. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money, like $1, okay? There's a lot of day traders.
You can copy my over, but don't make it look like yours. Say less.
I think we really need to get back to the basics with spending. As far as we really need to prioritize, there's just too many programs that we really, really don't need. I mean, we need them, but I think it's just getting too out of control. I think what we need to do is just make a list of priorities in the next 5 to 10 years that's absolutely needed.
So, Tom, back to your first point real quick. The first point you made, these illegal businesses, as you described, what are you talking about specifically?
I'm talking about small businesses, okay, that are operating like contractors that do not pay any income tax, okay, on a federal, state, or local level, okay?
I'll be right back.
They're, you can call them mom and pop companies or what have you, but there's millions of them out there, okay, or hundreds of thousands, we'll say. I mean, I might be exaggerating a little bit. But if you add up all that money that they're putting in their pocket and not paying any taxes on, it's a significant amount of money.
Okay.
And that's all I want to say.
That's Tom in Pennsylvania. This is Karen Willard texting us this morning. I'm in support of the 23 budget, specifically pay raises for federal civilians and military personnel, investment in modernization and expansion of rail, investment in access to broadband and internet for rural and less populated areas, improvement to infrastructure and strengthening supply chains. This is Ron in Nashville texting us saying most reasonable people believe in some defense spending for our safety, but the words tax on billionaires is just code for his Democratic base. This is a proposed redistribution of wealth, which the Democratic Party uses to motivate their base. However, it's just a slogan because the super rich buy Congress every day. That's Ron in Nashville. Part of the spending proposal from the president specifically looks towards law enforcement. The Wall Street Journal picking that up, saying that the budget proposes $17.4 billion for law enforcement at the Justice Department. That would include $1.7 billion to fight gun trafficking and for other firearm-related efforts, and provides funding for the U.S. Marshals and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to address violent crime. It also would call for the funding of 300 additional Border Patrol positions. Let's go to Michael. Michael in Maryland, Republican line.
Yeah, thank you, Pedro. This is Michael. I think, we're really spending too much on defense. I am a big defense guy, but I think we need to refocus. We need to spend we've got 150, 160 bases around the world. We don't need to be focused in every area of the world. Obviously, China is our number one competitor that we need to be focused on. The more we spend on NATO, the less they spend on themselves. They need to they need to be up front on this Ukraine thing, and we need to set up another NATO-type organization in the Pacific with India, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, surrounding China. So refocusing our expenditures, not just keep throwing money at issues, which is always what government wants to do. It doesn't provide a better result by just spending money. So refocus. Thanks.
Okay, that's Michael on our Republican line. Let's go to Cliff in the Virgin Islands, Democrat, line for Democrats. Hello.
Yeah, good morning, Pedro. I agree with the last caller. I think that we're spending way too much money on the military. And I think what this war in Ukraine is showing us is that all the weapons that we've been producing over the last 40 years or 50 years to assure a mutually assured destruction and stop and, not get into a war, is what's showing now is that we're not going to go and get in direct conflict with Russia or China. If China goes into Taiwan, we're not going to send the military in there, or we'll just annihilate the world because it'll turn into a nuclear war. So why are we spending all this? Why are we spending all this money on the military?
That's Cliff in the Virgin Islands. Part of the president's speech yesterday, his presentation about the budget, also included another reaction, or at least more comments from him about the comments he made in Warsaw over the weekend about Vladimir Putin. You can see it online at our app, but here's a portion of the president from yesterday.
When you say that you're not walking anything back, you do feel that Vladimir Putin should be removed from power? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I was expressing just what I said. I was expressing the moral outrage I felt towards this man. I wasn't articulating a policy change. And I think that, he continues on this course that he's on. He is going to become a pariah worldwide, and who knows what he becomes at home in terms of support. But,
are you concerned this remark might escalate the conflict?
no. No, I'm not. I'm not at all. Look, and look, the other thing is that a couple people have asked me as well.
Oh my God, that's right. I muted myself accidentally. No, dude, I love this shit. They're literally like, oh, hey, what do you, like, Biden one day just goes, oh, I don't really think that, I don't think that this guy should be the leader of a country. I don't think this Putin guy should lead the country. I think he's a bad leader. Pretty much. That's pretty much what he said. It's pretty much just like, morally, not good. And then, everyone's taking it as, this Biden guy, or this Putin guy, this Vladimir Vladimировich, he's causing a lot of trouble. He's gotta go. It's time somebody do something about him. You capiche? It's just at first, Biden's this weak fucking president, and now he's this mob boss that's here to kill Putin. It's just bro, pick a lane. But I love it. I'm all here for it. Everyone's so are you trying to assassinate Vladimir Putin now? No, I'm not trying to do any. I just don't think he should be. So you want to get rid of him? Is that what you're trying to say? I just don't think that he should be.
Ask the question, but that other.
So you're trying to kill Vladimir Putin right now?
No.
No.
And has it weakened NATO? No, it hadn't. NATO has never, ever, 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 ever been as strong as it is today. Never.
Again, that's the president from yesterday. Gregory in Sherman Oaks, California, texting us the 1/100th of 1% who get more out of this country, not to mention the planet, than anyone else, should pay a lot more than 20% in income tax. And that microscopic slice of the richest Americans should be a lot bigger. This is from Lucienne off our Twitter feed saying that she agrees with Representative Pramila Jayapal. The Defense Department way too bloated as it is. The last defense budget request was more than the Pentagon requested. The focus of the budget should be on domestic programs that help people. Let's hear from John, Republican line in Pennsylvania.
Hello.
Hello, you're on.
Hello.
Yeah, I get a kick out of you, Pedro, and the rest of you on there. As soon as a conservative says something that you don't like, you hang up on them. That's not right at all. That's all I have to say. You must be a
John, while you got you on, since you called about assuming the topics at hand, what do you think about these requests from the president as far as the budget is concerned?
I don't think it should be. They should tax them that much money. They're the ones that make the jobs up. And another thing is they're going to take their money elsewhere.
What do you think about the Defense Department request as far as the increases called for by the president?
I think we should increase a lot more. We have to protect ourselves. Thank you.
Okay. Let's hear from Gary.
You know what? Respect to this guy, all right? He called, he spoke his piece, and, you know, even though it's total bullshit, the Pedro asked him, and you know what the guy didn't do? He didn't go, God damn it, why did you cut me off like that? He just answered the question. That was really respectful. I like that. More people need to do that. It's like, he doesn't just like shut down conservatives, but it's like what happens is these people will come on and then they won't engage in the topic of the day. They just spout out their own thing, and everyone's only got like 30 seconds to a minute with this guy, which means that by the time they're done with their rant, he literally has to move on now. He can't not. He has to keep the show going.
Gary in Orlando, Florida.
Like, no one's going to care about that. They're just going to see,
I believe the budget is about right.
He's biased toward the Republicans.
That Republicans keep saying over and over again that Democrats don't support police, but I see a sizable increase in police budgets. It's not generally the police themselves, because most police officers are not bad. It's usually the training. It's usually the people that train you. As somebody who served in the military and trained other people, it can be a bad trainer. You're trying to or try to show the other person that you're tougher than they are, or that you can keep up with them. And sometimes it's something as simple as you have to make a certain amount of arrests, a certain amount of stops. And as for the budget, I think it's about right. I'm glad in some ways that the military payments are going up. And as for the billionaires, I think billionaires are overpaid stock boys, because most of them don't actually work. Do they actually work?
No, they're the owning class for the most part.
They're in Orlando, Florida. Space News reported
what they do for work is going to look very different than what an average person does for work. It's not to say that a billionaire isn't busy, but they are more on the owning class than they are on the working class.
Today, when it comes to the request from the president saying it, $773 billion, part of that for the Defense Department for the 2023 fiscal year. That will include $24.5 billion for the U.S. Space Force and the Space Development Agency, about $5 billion more than what Congress enacted in 2022. The White House unveiled this yesterday, the funding request. Congress in 2022 appropriated $18 billion for the Space Force and $1.5 billion for the Space Development Agency. SDA is currently under the Office of the Secretary of Defense. It will be absorbed by the Space Force later this year, so the president's 2023 budget combines the funding. The proposed Space Force budget also includes $1 billion that was transferred from the Air Force to the Space Force's military personnel account. Neil in Kent, Washington, Democrats line.
Well, hi there. I think about Biden's budget is pretty, even and stuff, because, he's trying to help a lot of people out there. And like Trump, he's just for the rich, and I don't care what about the Republican says about Biden, but he's a good president. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Independent line. This is we'll hear from Mark Mark in Massachusetts. You'll be the last call on this.
Morning. Thank you, Pedro. I want to stick up for you and say that you do a great job and you're not biased at all. And
Yeah, stick up for Pedro.
Insinuating that you have, or any of the moderators have any slant is completely baseless. As far as Biden's projected budget, I wish he had dropped the Space Force and just made it part of the Air Force. And I like that his the asset proposal, where they would do like a, tax the net assets of individuals. That way there was less loopholes. And that's it. Thanks.
One other thing, as far as the request is concerned, this specifically deals with the FBI headquarters. If you have come to Washington, D.C. and perhaps see it at the J. Edgar Hoover building, plans to move that. That budget request said that the FBI's current headquarters at the building can no longer support the long-term mission of the FBI.
Whoa.
It's adding that the FBI has begun a multi-year process of constructing a
Really?
modern, secure suburban facility from which the FBI can continue its mission to protect the American people.
That's so crazy. The J. Edgar Hoover building in downtown DC is no longer an adequate building, long-term building for the FBI.
That's at federalnewsnetwork.com.
That's really cool to think about. I don't know.
More about the defense budget side of this request.
Because it's like, that's probably a pretty big building. You know? Like, there's probably like a whole underground facility and shit.
Yesterday with Todd Harrison with CSIS, who studies defense budgets. He'll break down some of what is the president's proposing, how it compares to years past, and you can ask him questions about that. He'll join us next. Later on in the program, supply chains, particularly when it comes to food, technology, and other things. We'll revisit how the Russia-Ukraine war is changing that with Patrick Penfield. He's a supply chain management professor at Syracuse University. Those conversations coming up on Washington Journal.
We did it! I got through a good chunk of my homework, and we got through viewer calls. That is
next.
Very cool.
Let's see what we got going on today. See what else we got going on. I have to leave at 8:30 for my first class, so I have about another hour. A little less. Okay, so what is currently live? We got this. Patrick Penfield discusses supply chain disruptions. Well, we could do that, or we could do more viewer calls. Yeah, I think I'm going to do more viewer calls, and then we'll do the boring stuff later when I have to kill another hour.
Washington Journal continues.
And then I can move over to Elden Ring later
Text
today.
us your thoughts during this open forum.
I'm going to get on, after this stream, I'm going to get on later in the day at like 6 Mountain Time. So that's going to be 7 Central Time. And that's going to be more of a fun stream. That'll be me playing games after a while.
Is the number to do so. The Washington Post reports on last night's meeting of the January 6th Select Committee. That meeting resulted in the committee deciding to hold 2 former Trump aides in criminal contempt. The committee voted unanimously to recommend the charges against former Trade and Manufacturing Director Peter Navarro and former Communications Chief Daniel Scavino Jr.
Hello, Kitty.
The House will soon vote on whether to refer Navarro and Scavino to the Justice Department for prosecution.
Kitty.
That news came, as Roll Call reported, as a federal judge in California ordered lawyer John Eastman to turn over documents to the House Select Committee investigating January 6 in a ruling that concludes that former President Trump, quote, more likely than not, committed crimes in attempting to obstruct the counting of electoral votes. Eastman reportedly advised Mr. Trump that Vice President Mike Pence could reject electors in particular states to impede Joe Biden's path to an electoral college win, and wrote memos outlining options in which Mike Pence could change the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. That decision yesterday by that California judge prompted a response from the Select Committee chair, the January 6th Select Committee chair, Benny Thompson. Here's what he had to say about that.
On the ruling today in John Eastman's lawsuit to stop the Select Committee from obtaining certain records. As the Vice Chair and I said in our statement earlier today, this ruling is a clear victory for the rule of law. I encourage people at home to read what Judge Carter wrote and consider his words very carefully. His warnings about the ongoing threat to American democracy should alarm every person in this country. I want to read a short excerpt from Judge Carter's ruling. Dr. Eastman and President Trump launched a campaign to overturn a Democratic election, an action unprecedented in American history. Their campaign was not confined to the ivory tower. It was a coup in search of a legal theory. The plan spurred violent attack on the seat of our nation's government, led to the death of several law enforcement officers, and deepened public distrust in our political process. More than a year after the attack on our Capitol, the public is still searching for accountability. I'm proud to say that this committee is helping to lead that search for accountability.
That committee hearing, by the way, still available at our website if you want to see it there at cspan.org. You can also see it in our app at cspan.now. Again, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, Republicans 202-748-8001 for and Independents 202-748-8002. The New York Times reporting that also as a result of the meeting of the January 6th panel, a conversation they like to have with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny Thomas, saying and reporting this morning that although the committee has been in possession of Ms. Thomas's text messages for months, not everyone on the panel had seen the documents before they were published in news reports. That prompted debate among the committee's members, several of whom urged the panel to try to interview her. A person familiar with the discussion said the panel concluded that Ms. Thomas had relevant information, that it was important for investigators to hear from her. CNN reported that, or earlier reported that committee's interest. So we'll start with Bob on this open forum. Bob joining us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Bob, thanks for calling and holding on. Republican line, go ahead.
Hey, Pedro, thanks a lot for putting me on here. Just following up on the last conversation for a minute, because I didn't really watch a lot of this subject matter you're talking about. I'm coming out of a World War II budget of 84, 86% of GDP. And when you trickle down to how big the country is now and everything that's going on, that put me on watching the Air Force and the Army budget meeting this week. And you know, they brought something to my attention I didn't know was going on. From the Panama Canal down to Antarctica, it seems that China has showed up everywhere, and every country down there either getting lithium or oil. And in fact, they're following the fish from that area, whatever type of fish you want to talk about. The other day they were talking about tuna and actually pre-catching them before they're actually fully grown. So I'm glad the budget is where it's at so we can follow up on these unforeseen circumstances that are popping up that the public really doesn't even know about.
Okay, that's Bob. This is Brian in Nebraska, Independent line.
Yes, thank you. I just want to encourage the government to continue to send all the military aid that we can to the Ukrainians. This is a critical mass time. The Russians have kind of pulled back, and it's time to continue and not slow down and bring this stuff to them in a timely manner, because this is when they really need it. The Ukrainians have stood up to a large military force and stopped them, and they want to be a democratic country. We need to support that in any way that we can.
From Kevin. Kevin is in Spring Hill, Florida, Republican line. Hi.
Hi, how you doing? I want to talk about that whole defense thing. Me being a neoconservative, I think it's important for us to intervene in foreign conflicts when necessary. I mean, you saw what happened when we pulled out of Afghanistan. Those Taliban raghead terrorist fucks are back in power, and that's not good for anybody.
Okay. Kevin calling us from Florida. We'll hear next from Charlotte in New York, Independent line.
Hi. Someone just asked your previous guest about private contracting and how much it costs. There is a book called Drift, which cited a number which is said was from Congress. It's 9 times the amount of using U.S. service members. but that might be an old number. So thanks.
Again, if you're interested in hearing and seeing that segment with Todd Harrison, you can go to our website at cspan.org and view it there. We talk about the app a lot here too. If you have, and if you got to go out and about and do things, you can download the free app on your phone. Follow along. It provides streaming coverage live of our networks and a short archive period as well if you missed something from the previous day. Again, more information at that at C-SPAN Now. We'll do open phones till about 9:15. If you want to participate, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, 202-748-8000, one for Republicans, and Independents, 202-748-8002. One of the people asked about Ginny Thomas, by the way, in the halls of Congress yesterday was Republican Senator Josh Hawley, talking to reporters, thinking and extending it to whether Justice Thomas should be recuse himself from certain January 6 cases that might appear before the Supreme Court. Here's part of that exchange.
I mean, what's the implication that the justice is signing off on her text messages?
Could be. I mean, she was texting, urging Mark Meadows to overturn the election, so it was a threat to democracy.
I get that, but I mean, listen, she's a independent adult woman. It just seems a little strange to me, all of these calls for her husband to be what, like minding her better? I mean, frankly, I think it's kind of misogynistic. I mean, it's like, oh, Ginny Thomas she's out there saying this stuff. Like, you better go get her under control. I mean, you're responsible for what she says. She's an independent person, you know, and she's got her own political views. She's been doing this a long time, and if you want to take issue with her, that's fine. But she's not on the bench. She's on the bench. I don't know. To me, it seems like, wow.
Republican line. This is from Dayton, Ohio. Fred, hello.
Oh. Hello.
Fred in Dayton, hello. You're on.
Hello.
Okay. What I want to know is I'm an old soldier. I was in Germany in 1956, and Hungary was having trouble with that Hungary trouble.
Damn, bro.
And this one today kind of reminds me of that. But then we had General Eisenhower as president of the United States, and he made a decision we weren't going to go in there because we'd been in 2 wars already, Korea and World War II. And to me, the guy we got in there today, Biden, it's not right to criticize the president, but I'm not scared of him. He's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
America has to stand up for its rights. We're taking care of too many other countries, and we're not worrying about our own country. And we got people out there in the Midwest, homes and storms burnt, tore down by the storms and fires and stuff. And we're worrying about a country across the water. They'll fight each other over there. They're not going to stop. I'm 85 years old, and like I said, I'm the second generation of the greatest generation because we were there after the war in Europe and stuff. And the thing is, I don't know. America, we're the greatest country in the world, but we have to stop helping everything. Everybody comes crying to us and so forth. And I don't know anymore.
Okay.
But
that's Fred. Go ahead and finish your thought, Fred. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I'm fed up with what I see. I love America. I was born and raised here, and I served time for it. But I'm just sick and tired of seeing America getting used as a kind of a money bag, and then we got the money, we'll help you. But I drove through France when I was in the Army, and gee, when you got all you see in France was Yankee, go home, go Yankee, go home. Then you go down and see an American cemetery. That turns your stomach.
Okay, that's Fred there in Ohio. Let's hear from Kathy in Florida, Republican line.
I just want to mention that we need to start with the local level, and James Shaw is a Republican candidate running in Florida for the Commissioner of Agriculture, and I saw an interview with him, and he seems like an amazing man that could do a great job for Florida. And one thing we've all learned that during a pandemic, a governor is more important than your president. So we got to start with the local level. And Ron DeSantis, I thank God every day for him.
What do you think about him signing that legislation into law yesterday concerning the teaching of kids in school, the so-called "Don't Say Gay" bill?
That's not that's all a lie. That "Don't Say Gay" bill. That's to keep what nobody wants their little children between kindergarten and 3rd grade learning about sex and sex education. No, it has to be approved by the parents. That's how it was back when I was a child. Even like for when you went to school for any kind of health class, you sprang home a note and it read, "Do your parents approve of this class we're about to have?"
Okay. So I don't know about you, but I got a sex ed crash course in 4th grade. I was when we sat there for an hour and learned about like male and female genitals and then sex. And that was it. And it was very scientific. It was not a place for you to ask very many questions. That was 4th grade. I don't think people are going to be talking to their kids about sex necessarily, but I think it's appropriate at that age to be talking about whether you might like boys or girls and how that might be a thing. You don't have to talk about sex right away to be like, do you like boys? Do you like girls? It's okay if you like either. Like, I think it's important to talk about those feelings early on, too, as they're starting to develop, not just while they're developing. Because, let's see. When I was in 4th grade and got that crash course, I had already learned through the internet what porn was and what sex was. I knew what boobies were. I've seen boobies. Like, I saw way worse shit by the time I was in 4th grade than like whatever gets explained in sex ed. And honestly, if they talked about that a little bit, and then they maybe talked about like what porn was, and that it wasn't really a good thing for me to be looking at that age, or like that it was like, you know, if someone could briefly explain to little 7-8-year-old Nick that stuff is something that like can kind of mess you up in the future, that would have been some pretty useful info, I think. I'm not messed up because of it, but it's like, I don't even know what that did to me, you know? And like, there's so many kids in that same boat. Like, a lot of my friends, like, how we discovered porn was like, we fucked around on Newgrounds long enough that we found out, you know?
That's what that's about. It is not, no, don't say. That is the Mockingbird fake news media spreading lies.
And I did say so-called. So let's just confirm. And again, the governor is signing that into law yesterday. Other person in the news in the last couple, today actually, in a couple of stories is Hunter Biden. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Aruna Vishwatha and others writing that prosecutors looking at some of his financial concerns as they advance a probe, saying in the past year, prosecutors have called several of Mr. Biden's associates and other witnesses to testify before the grand jury as part of their wide-ranging investigation into Mr. Biden's business dealings. They are examining whether he violated tax or other laws, including those governing lobbying for foreign governments through his business relationships in Ukraine, China, Kazakhstan, and elsewhere. Prosecutors have focused in particular, those people said, on payments from Burisma, which first flowed to a company called Rosemont Seneca Bohai LLC, before going on to Mr. Biden between 2014 and 2019. Hunter Biden held a Burisma board seat for which he was paid about $50,000 a month. This also adding that prosecutors have asked about paperwork the younger Mr. Biden used to purchase a car through funds from Rosemont Seneca. There's more there in the Wall Street Journal if you want to read it there. If you go to the Washington Times, a congressional interest on the same person, this is Kerry Pickett writing for the Times, that California Representative Darrell Issa sent document preservation notices to the White House, Facebook, Twitter, and members of the intelligence community, who he said were involved with coordinating the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story before November of 2020 and the presidential election.
Oh, God.
Again, more of that at the Washington Times if you want to read that there. We'll go to Colorado Independent Line.
Colorado. Hello, Fred.
Fred in Colorado. Hello. One more time for Fred.
Just breathe and.
Hung up.
Oh, come on, Fred.
Line for Democrats. Go ahead.
Good morning. How you doing this morning?
Fine, thanks. Go ahead. You're on.
I was wondering. It's an amazing thing. The government don't have no money to help the homeless, to help the people here in the United States. As far as insulin, the price of insulin and everything keep going up, and every time they give you a raise on Social Security, they raise the price of the Medicare. And I want to do the politicians, all of the senators and congressmen, do they have that much invested in stock in the pharmacy that they can't help the people in the United States?
Tom is next. Tom is in Michigan, Holland, Michigan, Republican line.
Yes, good morning.
One day I'm literally going to go through and see. Well, first we'll see if we're even able to find it. But one day I'm going to go through every single member of Congress and every member of the Senate, and I want to see all the money they have invested, like all the assets they have in the stock market. If that's possible, oh my God.
I think it's really a shame how the government really protects Biden and Harris from all the really brain dead things that are going on right now. They cover up for all of his, misdoings and his faux pas and his speeches. Pelosi back in the day wanted to plead the 25th Amendment on Trump because she thought he was losing it. Well, I think we're more than there with Biden right now. I don't know where Pelosi is in this deal, but Biden is way past that point. And I think both of them need to go. They're going to get us in so much trouble. Our economy isn't dwindling because of anything to do. It's a little bit with Russia, but this started a year and a half ago. And our open borders and things like that. Biden and Harris are destroying our country. I don't understand how anybody sticks up for them. And then with this whole Burisma thing with Hunter, nobody. It just seems like the Democrats are insulated because the DOJ and the FBI are so tainted against Republicans, and all they'll do is go after Republicans, not Democrats. I don't get that. Okay. So we're in a really weird time right now, and it is so tainted. The coup against Trump with Hillary Clinton and this whole Russia collusion. Now we know what all happened.
Okay,
nobody goes after them.
That's Tom in Michigan. President Biden, again yesterday, talking about the release of the federal budget when it comes to financial matters, on what his priority is when it comes to reducing deficits in the budget plan. Here's some of that from yesterday.
The first value is fiscal responsibility. The previous administration, as you all know, ran up record budget deficits. In fact, the deficit went up every year under my predecessor. My administration is turning that around. Last year, we cut the deficit by more than $350 billion. This year, we're on track to cut the deficit by more than $1.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion. That would be the largest one-year reduction in the deficit in U.S. history. And here's how we're achieving it, this record deficit reduction. First, we're growing the economy. We've created a record 6.7 million jobs since I took office, and we've generated a GDP growth of 5.7%, the best economic growth we've seen in this country in over 40 years. This has led to a substantial increase in government revenues and dramatically improved our fiscal situation. Secondly, this record economic and job growth has made it possible for us to responsibly and significantly cut back on emergency spending. Earlier in the pandemic, it was right to give people help to make ends meet and to keep this economy going. But because of the progress we've made dealing with these emergencies, the labor market is strong and unemployment claims are at historic lows. We ended the pandemic unemployment assistance programs because Americans are back to work.
Let's hear from Rebecca in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Democrats line.
Rebecca.
Thank you for allowing us this opportunity. I do support Ketanji I will be heartened to see our highest court look more like the face of this country. She has a razor-sharp sense of the rule of law and a reverence for following it. I look forward to seeing her go to work on the Supreme Court.
Reporting this morning in the Washington Post that the Senate Judiciary Committee Monday formally scheduled a vote on Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination for the court on April the 4th, triggering a timeline that would put the judge on track to be confirmed as the court's 116th justice and its first black woman by the end of next week. We'll launch a series of procedural votes on the Senate floor next week, culminating in a confirmation vote on Thursday or Friday, as long as enough Democratic senators are healthy and present. Again, you can see more reporting that the Washington Post. We'll go to Jackie. She's in Wisconsin, Republican line.
Hi, I just have a couple quick questions. One, only in American politics can you have a $5.8 trillion budget and make some kind of point that it's going to reduce the deficit. I've taken enough economics and accounting classes that the numbers don't add up. Secondly,
the numbers don't add
to the
up.
January 6th committee, I was talking to Randy Rhodes the other day on a liberal show. I like to get everybody's point of view. And when we were talking about January 6th, she did not know that the U.S. Capitol had been bombed in the 70s and the 80s. Somehow people think this is the first time anyone's ever gone against our government. And all hell's going to break loose because the Republicans or right wing or whatever you want to call them came after the Capitol on January 6th. This has happened before, and it just amazes me that.
She's right about this. Let me see. On November 7th, a female-led group called the May 19th Communist Organization, or M19, bombed the north wing of the Capitol building, an act intended, the people behind it claimed, to protest racism, sexism, and what they saw as President Reagan's imperialistic vision for the country. No one was injured, but the blast did $1 million in damage. In his new book, Tonight We Bombed the U.S. Capitol, terrorism expert and New American fellow William Rosenau traces the often overlooked groups of activity from 1979 to 1985. From its origins and passive resistance up to its violent end, Washington chatted with Rosenau ahead of its January 19th stop at Politics and Prose. Okay, so that is valid. This lady's not wrong. And it sounds like there's a lot of activity that happened during that time, but it seems like, if it's similar to this, it's a lot of small insurgent communist groups. So this is like almost what equates to like terrorist groups. This would be like, this would be like after 9/11 when we were all thinking everyone was going to be like sleeper cell jihadists or whatever, that's what this pretty much is like more similar to. Whereas like, and that's like a small group of people with very extreme beliefs operating on their own behalf. This other thing, a president of the United States is doubting the legitimacy of the election. Thousands of people are marching on his behalf because they think it's legitimate. Thousands of people go storming the Capitol. And then we find that there's a group of hundreds of people who have infiltrated that group and are actually intent on causing an insurrection. Shout out Oath Keepers. So, same, but different.
No one on the Democratic side, and I'm talking a liberal media source, had no idea that the Capitol had been bombed previously.
Okay, that's Jackie in Wisconsin. When it comes to some more news about the January 6th committee, there's a story in the Washington Post this morning saying internal White House records from the day of that attack on the U.S. Capitol that were turned over to the House Select Committee show a gap in President Trump's phone logs of 7 hours and 37 minutes, including the period when the building was being violently assaulted, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post and CBS. The lack of an official White House notation of any calls placed to or by President Trump, then President Trump, for 457 minutes on the 6th, from 11:17 a.m. to 6:54 p.m., means the committee has no record of his phone conversations as his supporters descended on the Capitol, battled overwhelmed police, and forcibly entered the building, prompting lawmakers and the Vice President, Mike Pence, to flee for safety. Let's go to Iris, Independent Line in Michigan. Hello.
Hi, Pedro. Gee, I hope everybody is just able to stand up straight with everything that's being thrown at us. Pedro. How is anyone on this earth going to clean up all the rubble? We haven't cleaned it up from World War II. It's all over the place. They keep creating more. Some of it looks old. Some of it looks like it's left over from 75 or 100 years ago. And what about the death camps? Are they going to stay? Who's going to clean it up? Is that what our soldiers are going to be doing? And where are they going to put it? And how
She
do you
sounds so
build on top of
distressed.
it? We can't keep creating rubble all over the world and then expect somebody else to come in and invent a way to clean it up. You can't build on top of it because the memories are still there. This nonsense has to stop. We have to get this war culture out of our brain and start thinking about how to preserve life rather than take it.
Okay, that's Iris there in Michigan.
She's,
We'll go
oh
to
my
David in
God.
Baltimore, Maryland,
So,
Republican line.
that made me feel bad.
My call this morning, sir. Just want to talk about the possible new Supreme Court Justice, Mrs. Jackson. You know, just
Judge
discussing
Jackson.
that people could act. Pardon me?
Judge Jackson.
Yes, it's just discussing that, you know, people are actually supporting this lady. You know, it seems like she's anti-American. She hates her country. And what Ted Cruz was talking about the other day, you know, about, you know, porn. She's soft on, you know, not just porn on the internet and things that go across there. And it's just disgusting to see that because we need to be, you know, someone in there that's hard on crime. And this lady, you know, she's going to let all these criminals out, you know, let them on the street, and it's going to make our country very safe. And anybody could ever vote for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris must be out of their freaking mind because these people just don't care about the safety of American people or anything. I mean, they are so anti-American. And then we just miss Trump a lot. You know, he loved his country, and Biden hates his country, and that should be a requirement for a president to love their country. And Biden just selling our country out. So
okay. That's David in Baltimore, Maryland. The Hill reporting that, these are from various sources, that signs of hope for an end to the Russian-Ukraine war emerged on Tuesday morning when a Russian official said Moscow would, quote, reduce military action in the north of Ukraine near Kyiv and Chernihiv. According to reports, negotiations between the two sides are taking place in Turkey, a little more than a month into the conflict that has killed thousands on both sides, devastating much of Ukraine and left stiff sanctions on Moscow. Talks in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine have wrapped for the day but are expected to continue. Let's go to Kent, San Diego, California, Democrats line.
Hi. Yeah, I keep listening to these Republicans, and it just drives me crazy because time after time, Republicans have just done traitorous things. They negotiated with the Iranians to hold the hostages longer. They tried to overturn the election. When that didn't work, they attacked the Capitol, and they say that Democrats hate this country. I just don't understand how they can get away with saying this stuff with anything like a straight face. That's really all I want to say is that, you know, we have to keep up with, you know, this constant barrage from Republicans that Democrats hate this country. And
I'm going to
just straight up traitors.
Change my clothes and get ready for school.
That's Kent from San Diego. The New York Times reporting under the headline, Biden administration will vaccinate some undocumented migrants. This is Eileen Sullivan reporting that under the plan, officials will start vaccinating undocumented migrants without proof of vaccination who are apprehended by border officials but not expelled under the public health order in 7 areas, including San Diego, El Paso, and the Rio Grande Valley. A description of the plan was shared with the New York Times. According to directions given to senior Homeland Security officials on Sunday, if single adults refuse to be vaccinated, They will be detained and put into deportation proceedings. If they request asylum and cannot remain in detention, they'll be released with monitoring devices with stringent conditions. If migrant families refuse vaccination, they will also be given monitoring devices with same conditions. Again, if you want to read more, that's the New York Times where you can find that. We'll hear from Tina in Alabama, Republican line. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for this service. To Jackie, who mentioned the bombing of the Pentagon and the Capitol building back in the 60s, that was Weather Underground, led by Bill Ayers. Carol Rosenberg served time for that. She was pardoned, and she is now a board member on Black Lives Matter. Appreciate the time.
That's Tina. Last call on this topic. Appreciate all of you who participated. Our last segment takes a look at supply chain issues, particularly now as Russia and Ukraine factor into how those chains may be impacted. Joining us for that conversation, Syracuse University professor Patrick Penfield. He'll answer your questions on it when Washington Journal continues.
Pants acquired. Oh, did this video end? Wow, it did. Well, with that in mind, I'm gonna call it for this morning's stream and go to school. I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. If you want to jump in again for a little bit more boring C-SPAN and then some Elden Ring later, I will be on around 6 o'clock Mountain Time, so that's 7 Central.